facing something like cancer, it was like a punch in the chest. I remember walking around feeling like, I feel like I could just explode at any moment. When has the suffering reached a point that I'm willing to do something about it? Like, we just have to change something very, very simple about our mind. Like, that's how you start your day. You start your day with like a mind massage.
So just for context, can you explain a little bit what your company does and what your company focuses on?
Sure. So we were medical communications, so communications being a marketing company, and communications being that we were sending a message out. Our message was education. So we created educational tools for doctors, and we allowed healthcare companies, such as drug companies, to advertise or sponsor them. Examples of those are medical journals, medical conferences, online study platforms, webinars, seminars, training series, and so on.
So I'm interested to explore a little bit. You're trying to live that more Buddhist way of life of compassion and wisdom and Buddhist ethics. But I'm interested to understand a little bit about the challenges you had with that. You know, in an everyday business, there's a lot of challenges really trying to stay in alignment with that, be guided by that internal compass. I'm sure you've had plenty. I know I've had plenty.
Definitely not all roses.
Yeah.
I mean, definitely, I would say firing people was something that the first time I had to fire somebody, I called in somebody to help me because I was just so afraid. It's like, if you've never been a boss that's had to fire somebody, you might think, well, that sounds quite ridiculous, but it's actually quite terrifying. You're about to really impact somebody's life and your words. So that was a really hard thing for me personally. And I would see the look on people's faces and I had to do it, you know, thankfully not that many times, but enough times. And so I came to understand that the most important thing in that moment was that that person felt loved and cared for. So I would intentionally book 30 minutes on my calendar to meditate on compassion and think about how that person, I would walk through in my mind that situation. I would meditate on it before it happened. And so I knew when I sat down there that the words were coming out of my mouth were coming from that place authentically, not just sort of some kind of hyperbole like, oh, you'll be fine, I'll write you a reference letter. No, it was really like, I really deeply care about you and this is not working out. And I'm really sorry, you know, and these words were coming from a very deep and authentic place, but I had to work into that. I think this is one of the ways that I learned myself to bring the practices into my own feelings of difficulty.
It's a challenge, though, for most people, isn't it, that are leading organizations or running a business like you is expediency. I don't have time to put 30 minutes in my calendar to do a meditation on compassion. So it's almost like the expedient approach, let's just get this out of the way and move on, seems to be more appealing than to really approach everything so intentionally.
I think, again, it was this long-term view that I had, and it felt like that old saying that, I don't know, maybe I'm dating myself now, but a stitch in time saves 9. And I felt that 30 minutes for me was going to regulate me as well. And so I was going to be able to be productive after that because I was going to not feel horrible after having fired somebody. But they saw how it impacted me. So I think in that way, I was like, it's like a little advertisement for a meditation.
And yet at the same time, one of the challenges people have is that when they're in that state of overwhelm or a lack of peace and they haven't trained in the way that you have. I remember somebody saying this to me recently where they said, the fear I have is that if I have to turn in and work with this out of control mind that you're talking about, my fear is that I have responsibility now for that. Whereas if I just live the way I'm living, I can distract myself from that and just ignore it as much as I possibly can and get through life. I think a lot of the challenge people have with that uncertainty in the future is when I look in and you're saying, well, now you can do something about it. Really, actually, what I face is a huge amount of fear of having to look at and work through my own mind in those situations. I'd rather just keep busy and keep on getting on with my job and so forth.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what we all do our whole lives, you know. You wake up, can I just get through this day, you know, and I think at a certain point you realize you're just, I don't know, like moving the deck chairs, you know. Honestly, I think a lot of us have come to these teachings through seeing I have a lot of suffering in my life and I don't know what to do about it. And then when you actually doesn't take very long. You just have to listen to one teaching and you'll see that those things, if you embrace those and just give it like a really open mind, that you can embrace those things and you'll feel change in that one teaching. You will feel it. Yeah, and I think that the other parts of the teaching, like we just have to change something very, very simple about our mind, and it's revolutionary. And we're missing out on all of that if we just want to string things together to distract ourselves, which, by the way, I totally understand. It's a letting go. We're holding on. And that was actually something that took me a long time to understand too, the letting go. I felt the opposite somehow.
I just wonder what's worked for you to balance those two. You have demands of running the business and making sure everyone's okay in the business, the organization's functioning well. And yet it seems like the self-care element is to you clearly very important, and the spiritual aspect of that, you have a high priority on it. I think for most people, they think, I don't have the time or energy for this. I just wonder how you found that to create that balance.
I completely appreciate that point of view as well. And yeah, it is something that it's a different perspective. And I think the easiest way to understand it is the gym analogy. I think a lot of people make time for the gym because they feel good, right? I have to go to the gym a couple times a week. I feel good. I want to. People enjoy it. So, but you don't go to the gym and like notice that your muscles have changed that day. You don't like do maybe some people do if they've worked out for a long time, but I certainly don't. I go work out and I look exactly the same, maybe a bit sweatier. But you make that time, and over time, you feel the benefit of that. And so then you have this experience of a life with working out and a life without working out, right? And in your own experience, like when I'm working out, my whole life is better. I eat healthier, I sleep better, so on. Meditation's just like that. If we can carve out just a small amount of time in our life, we will over time see the impact of that, and we'll be able to have that comparison of, I know my life when I do a little bit of meditation, and I know my life when I don't. And then when we get a little bit more practice, we know how to integrate meditation into our daily life more, like in our workplace, because we've built up that mental muscle in our meditation. And we can start out very simply, breathing meditation. I encourage people to start out very simple breathing meditation, and just to do that in the morning, settles your mind, your mind's peaceful, and then you start. You're like, that's how you start your day. You start your day with like a mind massage. Is what I try to tell people. It's like, wouldn't you like someone to massage your mind? And your mind feels really good when you go out into the day. New York's quite affronting when you go out of your apartment, right? There's a lot of sirens and stuff. So it's nice to have a mental massage before you go out there, but it's nice for anyone. Like, get a massage of your mind. You can give yourself that.
But what I'm also interested in is you obviously progressed your company and you were progressing this training in meditation and Buddhist wisdom over quite some years. But at one point in your life in 2014, whilst running your organization, you hit what for most people would be the most challenging experience of their life. And at the same time, you were still running your business. This is when you were diagnosed with cancer, as you know, in 2014. Yeah. And I'm just interested how you moved through that period and what you learned from it. Because so many people face adversity, and in the adversity actually collapse, understandably so. So I'm just curious to understand that journey for you.
Yeah. The very first moment was definitely shock. I had the Charlie Brown moment, which, the doctor's talking and there's no words, just like, wow. And I'm just like, wow, there's so many thoughts going on in my mind. And it took me a moment, and I was, with at the time, my husband now was my boyfriend at the time. And he's like, oh, baby, he goes, isn't this what you've been training for? And it was really interesting because, I had been practicing for a while at that point, and, what happens when you get old and you get sick, we're facing these really difficult, painful, scary things, how are we going to be and how are we going to show up? And so I got a lot of opportunity to really put those teachings into practice and I think it inspired me as well, not just people around me. Like, I felt inspired by my own ability to sort of transform things and go in and see this as this very light, flexible thing. It wasn't a death sentence. Even though I had stage 3B cancer, And it was already in my lymph nodes, and the doctors were panicking a lot more than I was. I mean, they really were. One of the first doctors that took my mammogram, she said, "I don't like this." I'd never heard a doctor say something like that before. They wouldn't let me leave without having booked a biopsy. And I was telling them, "I'm sorry, I'm doing a fundraising gala with Katie Couric tomorrow. I can't possibly miss that." I was like, and they booked around this because I have to go to my fundraiser. I was like, I don't have breast cancer, really. I was 40, I think. And so I'd gone back, and fortunately one of my meditation friends had come with me. I was like, it's just going to be a long, boring day, and then I'm going to come out. And he says, it's fine. And I was there for hours, and they diagnosed me on the table, and was in the shock. But the culmination, I think that, once you have, what is it? Buddha gave 84,000 teachings. So I think of all of those, like this massive toolbox, like that you're carrying around with you, metaphorically speaking. You're carrying this box, and all of those teachings are in there. And so you're faced with this really big situation. Like, what tool are you going to pull out? So you pull one out, you try it, it doesn't work. You pull another one out and you try it, and oh, that one works really well. And so you just go with it. And I think you get the benefit when you face something so big to say, well, I got two roads to go here, right? And the other one seems really bad, so I'm going to go with the fun road. And the night I met my oncologist, I was sitting there with one of my friends, Leslie, and she knew I like ginger ale, so she bought this fancy bottle of ginger ale, and we were sitting out drinking ginger ale, laughing our heads off. And the doctor actually cautioned me not to drink too much alcohol. She thought we were drunk out in the waiting room. We were just having fun. The night I was diagnosed with cancer. I know that probably sounds really weird, but I wasn't joyful about cancer at all. And I was scared. There was a lot of fear there, but I was able to transform a lot of it. And I spent the first 6 months really doing that. And then it did get really quite hard. And I had to work. I would say that the transformation in the first 6 months was easier. And in the next 6 months, 6 to 12 months, it was a lot of work, but I still worked really hard to transform.
Is this when you went through the chemo journey?
I had gone through the chemo. It was the end of my chemo. So,
right.
So all of the physical, in the beginning, you have chemo a few times and you get sick, but the effects are cumulative. So if you have diarrhea for a week, it's different than if you have diarrhea for 9 months, because different things happen to your body. And the last thing that happened, I had blisters on the bottom of my feet. I had no hair, no eyebrows. There was no hair on my body. I had ulcers, like sores in my mouth. I had rashes on my body. And then the final insult was my fingernails all of my fingernails started like lifting up, and like they all just came, like got, blew up and had to be cut and removed, and they fell off. It was awful. I couldn't touch anything. I was in this excruciating pain. And I remember going through points where I was like, oh, I can't even see anyone. I couldn't, this means I'm really weird. I couldn't put underwear on because I couldn't touch anything. I had to wear skirts so I could lift them up. And, there was all this stuff happening, but I insisted on going out. My teacher called me a true New York character. He goes, really, like, because I had to wear these weird clothes, these big shoes that I could fit my feet into. I had to wear these gloves on my hands so my fingers didn't touch anything. And I would wander over to class and sit in the back, and sometimes I'd cry in the back of class because I was in so much pain. People would come and hug me, and I think that, going through those hard times was really good for other people to see as well. And just knowing that you have the tools to be able to face something like, a really deep cancer diagnosis and come out the other side and feel like was all this dream, and then having this like sort of retroactive experience of like, I faced something really big, and I knew in that I had this realization in it, like I can face anything now. Because at one point there were women crying in the room saying, I'm the 4th time getting cancer. And I was like, oh my God, I don't want that. But having gone through it, it's like, oh, all of these things you can work with. Nothing's impossible. And I think that's the courage it gave me. And I wanted to give that to other people. Yeah.
So one of the Buddhist concepts is how suffering can have good qualities. What's your experience of that on this journey?
I think it means that it it's helpful in some way, right? So how can suffering be helpful? Like, I don't want suffering, but we can't control the things that happen around us. And if our response to that, once we realize that our suffering is our response, and going back to that self-responsibility thing, I actually remember a moment that I had where I realized that, and it was like the Matrix blue pill, red pill moment, and I wanted out. I was like, I want back to my other life. Can I just have a moment of freedom? I really did. I remember where I was sitting when I had that moment. I had a Dharma book on my lap, and I looked out the window, I looked at that, and I was like, oh no, I'm in it for life now, because you can't unhear it. You can't put the genie back in the bottle, right? Once you realize, like, you're in this life. I remember I used to look at animals wistfully, like, look at that bird, like, it's like chirp, 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 chirp. And then I was told, no, that bird's terrified. It's going to be eaten. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we're just wandering around like these suffering beings. But if we chose to focus on the suffering, we'd all just be mortified and lying in vats of like depression or anxiety, right? So we do this thing, we distract ourselves, right? We distract ourselves from the suffering. So people, whatever, they watch lots of streaming media or play video games or drink or whatever people do to distract themselves or get busy with work, I've definitely done that a lot. I've used that a lot. But I was able to see that, like, me facing these sufferings gave me insights, gave me knowledge, gave me wisdom, that gave me confidence to face my life and know that someone can break up with me and I'm going to be okay. I know that sounds really trite from some standpoint, but we can think about people that we all know about, like Nelson Mandela and things that he experienced. You can face any suffering and going through the suffering, it gives you that wisdom if you face it with the right mindset, if you're willing to be creative.
Was there ever a point that you thought you might die?
There was. Fortunately, it was relatively brief, but I think in the beginning stages, you're in so much shock, it's really hard to relate to reality. I felt like someone had thrown me onto a really high-speed train, and I was going at this incredible rate because I was having all these calls and meeting with doctors, and all of these things were happening around me, and I was trying to keep it together. I'm a pretty competent together person, and I was having trouble keeping everything together. And my community, there's a prayer group on social media, and my friend had said to me, can I put you on there? And I was like, oh, that's really nice, And she posted it. She's like, oh, look at all these people. I read all these things people were writing about me. I'm like, wait, that's prayers for me. That's when it hit me. They were praying for me to not die. I was like, oh my God, that's me. I could really die. Like it was like a punch in the chest. It was really, it was like other people's words that brought the reality. I'd been so in shock in my life, but now all these people were talking about it. And honestly, what I do in those moments is I call it like going to my lowest common denominator. I have to wind it back, my understanding, all the way to something that I believe is true. And so I was able to wind it back all the way to something I believe was true, which was that this was all a process, and that anything I did, like everything I did from that moment on, I didn't have any control over whether I was going to die or not. But I did control how I showed up every day. And I believed that was going to help the direction I was sending myself in, even if just for those days. So, yeah.
And on your darkest day, though, I'm sure you've had such unbelievably dark days in the midst of that. What pulls you out of that hole?
Gosh. Yes, there were some dark days. Wow. I would have to say my spiritual friends. Yeah, definitely. Relying on those people and calling them, talking to them, having them reset. Like, I'm like, I'm spinning out of control. Give me reality. Give me a reality check. Bring me back to a place that I can get more peace, And I did. I went through many months of some pretty anxious times, and yeah, the only thing that pulled me out of that was probably a bit of faith too from my practices, or a lot of faith, but my spiritual friends, and really relying on them, people who I trusted, that I could call and just be myself and don't have to pretend everything's going, I feel really good, I'm transforming everything, I'm such a great practitioner. No, actually everything's falling to pieces right now. Yeah.
What do you think that's helped you now with other people? And it's not just people going through cancer journey, but also people just in general. Like, obviously you've learned a lot from that. You've grown a lot through that. It's
Yeah.
quite obvious to me. What is it that you feel that you've been able to bring to the lives of others as a result of the journey you've been on?
I don't know, maybe authenticity, confidence to just be myself. I think...
Why is that?
I had a lot of questions, I think that, I had a lot of self-reflection questions, or, why does this happen? Why are these things happening, that I pondered, and I had no way of getting at the answers. And through my study of Buddhism and through my practice of meditation, I found answers to things that have satisfied my ability to go through the world and feel confident to show up in the way that I show up, that it's in alignment with reality, and that I can then be, because I feel authentic, I can then just be naturally joyful and feel confident in that. And then I think hopefully that makes other people happy and not annoyed that I'm just laughing. And, my husband calls me the dancing bodhisattva in training. He knows I like to dance. So, and people at my center, they also know I like to dance. I sometimes just show up and bust out a dance. It's actually a true story. Yeah. People at my company knew that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they gave me a superlative award once that said Shelley is most frequently seen breaking into spontaneous dance for no reason. So, so I think, also just having the confidence to give people advice. When people see you over years being a stable person, I have so many people that call me for advice, many years after I've spoken to them, and tell me all kinds of things about their life, and feel very comfortable telling me. And I think this is another thing, is like, I know through my own experience, my own fallibility, like, I don't have a lot of judgment of people. And I think people feel that in my communication style to them. You can be who you are. You can be your authentic self with me, and I will listen and I will help you. And I think that the teachings have given me that confidence to not feel like I really feel confident when I'm giving advice to people, because I'm channeling the wisdom that I've been given. And it's wisdom that I've learned and that I've practiced and that I've experienced. And so I can give that with confidence. Yeah.
So how do you think what you've learned and all of the challenges you've been through has helped you in an organization where you're having to lead that organization, and there's a lot of conflict between personalities and agendas, and everything you've gone through and everything you've learned over all these years brings a certain kind of authenticity to that and ability to see things in a very different way. And I'm just fascinated to understand how you've been able to help people resolve conflict and actually just live and work in harmony, or if that's even possible.
Yeah. I'm not going to lie, it's difficult. And, when you're managing people, a lot of your job, no matter what level you are, is dealing with conflict and dealing with difficulty. Not long before my company sold, we have a lot of generations in the workplace today, right? We have a lot of different communication styles, and we know that communication is like sort of the backbone of most difficulty, right? But how people are saying things, what they're saying, what they haven't said, all of those things, people's misinterpretation. So I had somebody who was an older gentleman, generationally known as a baby boomer, and I had somebody much younger, generationally known as Generation Z. They were both very upset with each other. Very, very upset with each other. Why? Does this man insist on calling me on the phone? Why? And I talked to the old man. I'm like, he's like, why? will this kid not pick up my calls? I'm like, wow, this is really interesting, But they were legitimately angry. There wasn't just like a little thing. They were like, why can this person, And it's interesting because in business, if you take even basic communication training, it aligns with sort of Buddhism. It's like the golden rule in communication is do unto others as they would have done unto themselves. It's not, you don't speak to people or communicate to people as you would be communicated to you. You learn what it is that person needs, and you're fulfilling their wishes. You're loving them. You're caring about their happiness. You're caring about their suffering. You're thinking about those things in your communication style. So I wasn't using words like this when I was talking to them, like suffering and happiness and love and compassion, but using the business terms of those, it's like a communication style and an effectiveness. Someone is closed to listening to, I'm sort of translating this into other speak. Every Buddhist word has a business word that really you can use, and helps these two understand, like, in my generation, the most effective thing, the fastest way to get to the answer is to literally speak to the person. And I believe that with all of my soul. This other person's like, that is a very ineffective and frankly affronting way. I feel very attacked and anxious when you do that. And that person was like, really? So it's just really interesting, because you can take the business approach if it's applying the same aligned principles and people will listen. And then, I don't feel like I'm trying to, teach somebody something they don't want to learn. It's that's the thing about Buddhism. It's just purely practical. It's life practical. And especially the way these teachings are presented. They're not go into a cave and meditate teachings. They're like, what do I do when my boss yells at me? What do I do when my partner is like in the room crying and I don't want to talk to them? What do I do when I think that somebody's going to take my job and I have to be nice to them and train them? Like, what do I do? How do I show up and feel happy at work? We have to live these lives. One of my favorite quotes is, because it just hit me really hard when I heard it, was, if the whole world was covered in thorns and walking across the earth hurt our feet, would we cover the world in leather or would we cover our feet in leather? And we all know logically, right, we would cover our feet in leather, but that's not what we do in life. We go around trying to make it's like, try to stop the waves from coming. I'm going to try to make you speak the way I want you to speak. Well, no, it's not about that. It's about the other person. It's about other. So, yes.
And how does somebody, so theoretically, that sounds wonderful. And in a business setting, that would be obviously optimal for everyone to kind of live and act in that way. But as you know, what I find the challenge is, how do you perceive that? How do you work with that when somebody hasn't got a spiritual practice, or they don't have a meditation practice that enables them to access that and develop those views over time and stabilize it? Like, how do you work within that setting when you can give advice in a conversation and it may temporarily pacify the situation, but it doesn't necessarily mean that those people are going to live with that consistently after that conversation? How have you been able to approach that?
You mean in the workplace? Well, yeah. I was really lucky again because I was allowed to create the rules at my own company. And when I first started my company, I had two rules. If you started at my company, I'd say, hi, welcome. My name's Shelley. I have two rules. One is, if you give me anything in any document in any form that should be in a spreadsheet, I will just give it back to you. I think in spreadsheets. So just give me everything in a spreadsheet. Word document, put it in a spreadsheet. The second one is you have to be nice or you have to leave. And you'll get a couple of warnings, but then eventually you can't be here. You don't belong at this company because that's not the kind of company. I don't want to show up and have people be mean at my company. I don't want that. I don't think other people want it. And so these were the rules from the get-go. But I get everybody doesn't have that ability. And so I think, when we're faced with situations that we can't get out of in the workplace, we have choices to make, right? I think there's three main choices, right? One, we can live with it. It's not very pleasant, especially if we're experiencing suffering. Two, we can leave. But if maybe we don't have the opportunity to leave, or we don't want to leave, maybe we like that job, but there's just something really bad and annoying there to us. And then the third thing is we can transform it in some way. And that's when we get to make the choice. And it's often that pivot point that we've been talking about is like, when has the suffering reached a point that I'm willing to do something about it. And I think sometimes, in Western culture, we go to therapy or, I don't know, distract ourselves. But we have the opportunity to transform it. And if we have the great good fortune to have come across some form of teaching that helps us to transform it. For example, I used to work with somebody who used to be really rude. And over time that built up. And I built this quite anger towards the person. A lot of anger. To the point I remember sitting around a table quite like this, and they tapped their finger on the table, and to me their tap sounded like an explosion because I had so much rage inside of me. And I went to talk to someone about it, and they gave me these 3 options. You can leave. I know you're going to do that. You can just live with it. Obviously you don't want to do that. You can transform it. And they advised that I meditated on compassion and just sat every day, brought this person to mind, and just thought about their suffering over and over and over and over and over again. And I did it. Didn't want to, because I had all this rage. I don't want to have compassion for that person. But I also didn't want to feel the suffering. So I had to make a choice. So I was like, okay, right, I'm going to give in. Plus, I trusted my teacher, this person who was giving me the advice. So I did it. And I got to a point, to this day, I love this person so much. And that, I still see that person that I meditated on every time. And this person, can still say mean things sometimes. But it doesn't matter. Sometimes I might have to walk away, but I still love that person. I have all this compassion and love in my heart because I spent the time and I transformed it. And it was good because that person was my business partner. He won't mind me saying this. And, we're very, very close, but it wasn't easy. We can have our cake and eat it too. We can if we want to transform.
Do you think almost like that environment encourages, like you're saying there, it's almost like you feel a deeper sense of responsibility for people when you see all the struggles they have, all the challenges they have, they're losing with you, losing with each other. Mm-hmm. It's like a deeper sense of responsibility and compassion to bring a whole different energy, a whole different wisdom, a whole different level of love and compassion to try and really encourage people to see we can all do this better. Do you think that it deepens? I know my own experience, that was my experience in corporate life where I felt a deeper sense of responsibility to my own development spiritually and to bring that energy to the organization because I saw so much conflict all the time and mm-hmm. self-centeredness and so forth.
Definitely. Well, I thought to myself, I'm going to these teachings regularly. If I can't do it, I cannot expect them to do it. So I cannot expect anything of someone that I'm not willing to put in the work myself for and at least have some level of confidence to be able to say, listen, things don't have to be this way. And like I said, it wasn't always easy. And talking to people about communication or getting along or being this way or that way didn't always work. And it wasn't, it's not like, I'm giving the image of this place you walk in and there's rose petals on the floor and everybody's hugging one another. There was definitely tension. People really cared about their products. And, and I do think actually there was at a point, because we had this culture, it backfired on us a little bit, where people got this impression they couldn't say something. And we had to really counterculture that to give people the freedom to express themselves and feel that they could dissent in a way that was really respectful. They didn't have to agree with everything. So to me, I think it's been a joy to be able to embrace these teachings and be a leader. And, I'm very open about it. I speak, at various places and when people ask me to talk about myself, I always mention that I'm a Buddhist meditator because I think that it's important for people to know and see those examples in the world.
And so I guess that to me is what I want to kind of finally explore with you a little bit, is here you are now several decades on in this training, also several decades on in running businesses. What now for you does success look like at this point in your life?
Success for me, honestly, I'm doing the startup journey and we don't have a product on the market yet, but these last 2 years have been incredible because of all the things that I'm saying. And, people talk about, I'd love to work in a company where everybody's aligned with the vision. It just, to me, it sounded like almost a unicorn magical thing, but I've gotten to do that. I work in a company and everybody in my company cares about the vision of what we're doing, which is why when I had to let people go, they said, yeah, this sucks, but you're going to do it and I'll be here to support you. So I've had this ability and I feel that this is a measure of success in a way. There's no money involved with it. There's money going that way, money coming forward. But I honestly, I would like to get this off the ground, because I do really believe that what we're doing, which is, building something to help many more people get jobs and not be locked out of the job market because they're not getting seen because of the ridiculous hiring process. And employers on the other side are getting all these candidates, and they have to weed through. People are so desperate, they're willing to say, there's just a bad situation going on. So I really believe it's going to help a lot of people. I'm very passionate about it, and I hope that I can get it up and out. And if I can make money from it, make a lot of money for it, I'll be so happy, because I'll be able to donate a lot of money, which is really, you hear about, it's by any means, there's so many people that have so much more than me, which is why zeros, it's just zeros at the end of the day. But what I do have left, I want to be able to give. And that feels like really such a powerful goal to work towards. And it also, because I'm not grasping at it, when things go wrong, it's just a step in the journey on the way there. It's not like, oh no, I failed. It's a very light thing. And we're like, okay, that wasn't the door. It wasn't door A or B or C. We're down to door M. Okay, let's go. M. M is our door, So it's very light. It's very flexible. It's fun. We're having a really good time. It can be stressful. I have some really amazing, high-powered people that have retired from their own lives, come out of retirement, because they're like, this is a really cool project. So I think, maybe I'm already successful. Maybe I hit there. So, yeah.
Definitely. Shelley, thanks so much for dropping in today. Really loved that conversation. Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.